Let's make some junk journal signatures together. Hi everyone, welcome to Hilltop View Journals. Today we are going to be making these junk journal signatures together. But before we get to hands-on, let's talk about what a signature is. A junk journal signature is simply a set or a bundle of paper sheets that have been folded in half and stacked together to form a single section of the journal. When you make a junk journal, you'll often have more than one of these groupings, each called a signature within the finished book. Each signature is made up of a mix of papers, which could include anything from plain paper, writing paper, coloured sheets, old book pages, music paper, envelopes, receipts, wrapping paper and other bits and bobs you've collected. There's no set formula. You can use whatever scraps you have to hand. Once you've prepared your signatures, they're usually sewn in or stitched into the spine of a cover to make up the full junk journal. So if you hear someone refer to a 3-signature journal, it just means their journal has 3 separate bundles of folded papers inside the cover rather than just one thick stack. So just for a summary, a signature is a collection of folded papers securely grouped together, ready to be bound into your junk journal. The heart of your journal where all the writing and creativity takes place. This is my traveller's notebook journal cover and it's leather. I bought it on Amazon. It's been through the mill. There's lots of scratches and things on there which I'm sure you could rub out with a bit of oil or something. When I'm on the go, I use this little pouch, again from Amazon. I've got a writing pen, a pencil, a ruler and my trusty Tombow Fudenosuke. I don't know how you say that, but it's a water-based pigment ink pen and I'm able to do my headings and things with that. So very basic supplies. Inside I've got my photos for my journal. I've just got this. I don't know why I'm keeping it really, but I'll probably use it in some kind of craft project, which I'll just pop to the side here. So then in my journals then, let's pop that there. I was wondering where that pen had gone. I've then got my signatures, which I hopefully will eventually create a journal with. And I don't like sharing my journaling too much because it's quite raw. Some fruity language most of the time. And sometimes I will also use these smaller signatures, which you can see they are taller, which is a bit of a pain, and I might stop doing that actually because you waste more paper that way. And then I do my rapid login, which hopefully I will explain in another video. But today I'm focusing on just making the journal signatures. So this is my setup. This is a blank one. And I've done very little in my signatures of late and they've been pretty boring and I'm getting bored of writing in them. So I need to mix it up a little bit, which is why I want to make some new journal covers. Sorry, new journal signatures. I forgot to mention, I also carry this around with me. I don't tend to carry it around when I'm going places, like when I'm going to the office, but it comes around with me in the house and then I can obviously use the glue and extra pens then when I need them. So this is what I'm using as my inspiration and I have made this on camera and I will find a video and link to it. And very basic components. You've got the inside of the signature. So these are the pages. I have put this little belly band in there because I was making this as part of the collaboration. So there's my signature pages, very plain. And then I've got the signature cover, which is just 2 sheets of paper. One main sheet and then another sheet for the pockets. And then I've got my smaller signatures, which are for my rapid login. And one goes in there. And another one goes in there. And on the front here, I've got some journaling cards. Yeah, I've left that on there like that so you can see how I've made it. used little strips for that. Then I've got a belly band and a very simple journaling card there. Sometimes I will add these smaller signatures to the front, and I'll find an example for you. So this is an example. This is one that I've recently finished, full of writing, and I have got the signature for the back as well, but I don't know what I've done with it. It's in my pile somewhere, but this is where I've added it to the front there with a snug little belly band. So that's another option. So we'll probably do a couple of these different ones, and we're going to start with putting the pages of the signature together. So that's how I do it. I put the pages in first, fold them up, and then I will create the signature cover and wrap it around to make sure that it is slightly bigger than the actual pages. If it happens that it ends up not being bigger, then I will add some lace on either side to extend, or I'll add some trims or anything really just to extend the cover page. So let's get going with this little part of the process. So I've got a huge pile of papers here. I've just gone through my stash and I've grabbed all the blues I've got, and they're from different artists, mainly RachandBella crafts, and then I've got some by artists I can't remember. I've got some pink monarch prints. I've got some Angela Kerr in here. There's just loads. I've also dug out some of my painty papers. I may end up using those for the ephemera, so I'm going to put those to one side. I've also got a mix. Oh, I also found these while I was looking for things. So I've got some fussy cuts that I can go and do in the evenings when I can't get to my desk. And I have also picked out some tea stain paper and some very neutral kit pages as well. So I've obviously got way too much here, and I've also got pages that I will use for the signature covers. Oh, I've got greens there. I don't really want greens. I want to keep the greens separate, so I'll just pull those out. They can go back in my pile. And that's kind of green, but it's also very beigey. So neutrals and lots of pretty blues. And then here, I found a doily. I've got some more blue pages, and I've got some very subtle prints as well. So most of the pages I will use, I'm able to write on, but I will add every now and again some really bright paper that I can't write on, that I will use to add ephemera and embellish. I like to do that, so it reminds me then to add something in at a later date once I've finished writing. So I'm going to put these now into piles and then start compiling my signature pages. And I have my piles. So I've got some plain original ephemera book pages, not ephemera, sorry. Yes, original ephemera. So they are, this is like a phone book, and I can never remember what these are called. It'll come back to me in a second. I've got my tea and coffee dyed paper. There's some odd colours in there I may need to pull out. I just saw a flash of colour there. Might take that one out because it's got pink in, so I'll keep it for the pink journal. So I'm bound to be making a pink journal sometime soon. I've got all the blue papers that I could possibly want. I've got all the natural neutral papers. I've got some lovely pages that I would like to use for the front covers of the signatures. Some are in portrait mode, some are in landscape mode. And then I've got let's move this. Ledger, that's the word, ledger. It's come to me. Okay, it took its time. Ledger paper. And then I've got this pile here, which is paper that, actually I can write on that one. It's paper that I can't really write on, so I will use it on the pages that I'm planning on putting some ephemera in inside the journal. And then I've got some book pages. Not a great selection. I really don't need many, but I've got some manuscript paper, got a doily there, and a couple of pages, basically from books I could reach. So I'll add those in a little bit at a time, maybe one. So I really haven't got that much room on my desk here because I'm filming. Normally I'd spread myself out to do this, but these can go to one side because I'm not going to need them for now. I'll be working on those a bit later. So here's my neutrals. Here's my book pages. Here's my blues. I've got my fill-in pages there, and I've got my neutrals, well, my tea-dyed paper and my lined paper there with the ledger. So I normally have about 9 pages in my journal signatures, excluding the signature cover. And there's a couple of ways you can fold your journal pages. You can fold them landscape way, and let's measure this to give you the sort of dimensions of what I would say a traveller's signature is. It's about 10 centimetres, 10 and a half, yeah, about 10 centimetres across, which is about 4 inches. And then it's the height of your paper, whatever you're using. So I'm using A4, so it's just shy, well, just past 21 centimetres, which is about 8.5 inches. So to get that, you would just fold it like this. Let's do it. So that's a little bit over. I tend to not get too worried about the size of my journals, as long as they can fit in my carry case, which is this one. I really don't mind. So I will quite often just make sure that I've got that to that size. But it's about 10 centimetres across. The other way you can do it is portrait. And this is a bit easier, because what you can do is you just fold it like that. And then you decide on whether you want to chop the end off so that it's 21 centimetres long, or high, I should say, 21 centimetres, which again is, what did I say it was? 21 centimetres, 8.5 inches high. Or you can leave the length and then you can fold it up. So that's what I'm going to do with this, because it's much quicker. And I am just going to now put my signature pages together, excluding the signature cover. So I'm going to start off with a tea-dyed page. Then I'm going to go in with, this is blank on that side, so I might print on that, so I'll change my mind about that one, or I might use that as the back of one of the other signature covers. Let's go in with this one. So I'm going to now look at the orientation of my pages, and this doesn't really matter which way it goes, which is great. That's why I love this kit from RachandBella Crafts. This one is this way, landscape, but it doesn't bother me that it's the wrong way. If it bothers you, then use the right way for cutting the paper, but for me, absolutely fine. So I'm going to start with this and then this, and then I'm going to go with a lined paper. Then I'm going to go with one of the neutral pages. No, then I'm going to go with one of my fill-in pages. So let's just grab one over here. There we go. Neutral page. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In between a neutral, no, in between the neutral and the fill-in. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put this at the end. So I got 5. So let's do another one of these. 6, 7, 8, and another neutral page, 9. Now it doesn't have to be, you don't have to follow it exactly. I quite like being random at times, but just to give you an idea of what I'm doing. And then, so this is a portrait size, or portrait as in orientation. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to probably, I might leave that like that actually, but I am going to cut that bottom piece off. I'm not going to make this into a pocket because it's a writing page, so there's no point in making it into a pocket. No, I'm going to leave it because I'm going to cut more off anyway. Right, okay, I've got my head around this. So what I need to do is put these all together. And fold. So I'm just trying to tidy them up. I'm not too bothered about all this being equal. You can score it up afterwards if you want to. I'm not going to. And then I'm going to press down. So notice that I don't fold each page individually, I fold them all in one go, and that is because you save a lot of space here. If you fold each one individually, then you'll get a space in between each of the pages, or you'll get a much wider space on each of the pages. So having a bone folder or the back of your scissors is really handy. And that is the signature. So I'm going to fold this in and I'm going to keep that as a fold. And what I might do actually is fold it shorter. So I'm purposely trying to have different widths of pages because I'm terrible for doing the same and making it all neat and tidy. So I want to try and do it a bit so that it's not so tidy and leave the ripped sides and things like that. Okay, and then what I can do is measure measure 21 centimeters. And let's just draw a line for a second. So I've got it there visually. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark that page there, and also wherever my music page is. All right, I won't do it on the music page, that's fine. So I'm just going to create one pocket. So I'm going to pull this out for a second. So wherever I've got that line, which is there, I'm going to fold to it. I might go just above it. So I've got a ready-made pocket there. Pop that back in. I can see it popping out there, so I've got to make sure that when I cut this, I don't cut into that. So I don't mind that it's a little bit shorter, that's fine. If you do mind, then maybe just change where you've folded. And then I am going to slice these. Now you could put these through a page trimmer if you like, but I find I just do not get it straight when I do a page trimmer. I don't mind not getting it straight when I do it, but when you've got a page trimmer, it's really annoying. So I'm quite happy to do this myself. Okay, so I've got these lovely little pieces, and you can of course do loads of different things with those. And make sure that's still intact, that's intact. And then that is my signature all done and ready to go. Okay, I'm going to do exactly the same now with a few more. Got my 5 signatures here, so I made these really quickly, pretty much following the same method. Got a pocket in there, got some music paper or book page, and lots of writing space. You could of course add envelopes, brown paper, any type of original book pages, certificates. It really does depend on what you're going to use your journal signatures for. But each one of these is about 9 pages. I wouldn't say they're all exactly the same height. A couple a little bit higher. But honestly, it's fine. These are handmade, so it really doesn't matter. The whole point of doing junk journaling, I think, or for me anyway, is that it is imperfect, that it's made by my own hand, and that I get a journal out of it that I can use. And of course, this is my way of putting together my personal journals. If you're making journals purely for decorative purposes, which is totally fine, and I do that as well, then you may want to have a different method of putting your pages together with lots more pattern paper and book pages and things like that. But for this is perfect for me to write in and embellish just a little bit, just to make it special and make it my own. So what I'm hoping I can do now is make the signature covers. So talking about the journals that I'm using, I said about traveller's size. So this is the traveller's notebook, and then it's got, let's have a look. You can see here, you've got the elastic. So this is like a Midori style in that you can take the signatures in and out. And I really like that, because sometimes I do like taking my signatures out to write in. And I think this one actually has got more than 9 pages in, possibly, but it's a bit more bulky because I've added a little bit of ephemera in there. But it's really great to be able to take out your signatures and just work on them like this, and they're nice and flat and easy to write in. And you can see here that I have actually bound this, and that is what I do. I bind them, and then I just tie a bow in the middle so that I can pull that out and reuse the wax thread when I'm ready to bind it into a journal cover, which who knows when that will be. It's quite funny really how many signatures I've got without journal covers, but that's for another video. I'm not making these at the moment. I am just concentrating on the main journal signatures. So I'm now going to make the journal signature covers, and it's preferable to have a heavier weight, and I've got all different types of weights here. Some I would say are 140. I think that's 140 photo matte paper, and I do love that page. Some of these are maybe a little bit lighter. That is definitely lighter and may not be suitable actually, so I might put that to one side. Oh no, I tell you what I'm going to do is I'm going to back that on there. So if you've not got thicker paper, what you can do is you can back 2 pages together and create the signature cover like that. So that's what I'm going to do there. So let's choose 5. So I've got 1. I do want that one. So I'm going to do 2. 3, 4, right, no, I'm not going to do that one. I'm going to do that one, 4 and 5. So let's just concentrate on those for now. I can always make more another time. And you can see here that this page, that one either way, that one either way. So these are actual portrait orientation. So ideally, well, I know actually that could go either way. This one is more portrait. And I think that one is. So let's start with the portrait ones. Oh, there's a little bit of my watercolours getting mixed up there. So let's start with this one. So when you're using it in portrait mode and you're going to wrap it round here, you're not going to have enough of the paper to actually get around the whole signature. Now I can see here I've cut the pocket. So where was I? So if I wrap that, so if I put that to the edge so that it's covering nicely the end of the signature there, and then I wrap it round, you will see I am short quite a bit on that side. So the way to do that is to actually go with the flow and just slightly fold it, and then you can have some pretty embellishments on the side there, or you can leave it as it is if you want, if you're not bothered by it being short, or you can trim it down so it's flush. Options, it doesn't matter. I am going to add some pretty lace or something to the side there, and what I need to do now is mark. I'm going to go slightly longer than my signature, and I'm going to keep this as a pocket because you can never have too many pockets. And what you might want to do when you're doing a pocket is slightly take a little piece of this off so that it doesn't overlap. You only need a smidgen. Not too much at all, but it does make life a lot easier when you take it off. There we go. Just do the other side. It's difficult to see actually where I folded it, so I'm going to draw a line. That's enough. I'll take it off. There we go. it's quite a high pocket, but I'm happy with that. So there we are, you can't see it now. And we need to add some fabric to the side there. So I'll go off and see what I've got in my stash and what would look pretty going along there. So I found this piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it in half, and I'll have the front bit with the lovely trims, and then I'll have the back with the other part of the lace. So I'm going to cut it, I think I'm going to cut it to the edge here. Okay. And I am going to put it on the outside, I think, so that it doesn't interfere with the pocket. That will make it easier. So that will go like that, and this will go on the other side. So before I stick it on, I'm going to do a bit of distressing. Now, I haven't really thought about what I'm going to put inside yet, but I figured if I just get the signatures done, and then inspiration will strike. So I'm really keen to just do some drawing and things in here, but I never seem to have the time, and so I end up just doing the writing, which is fine, but I would like to be a bit more expressive, I guess. I've also thought about doing a completely neutral journal and not use digital kits. So that's a project that I would like to do at some point. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm not going to stick that pocket down, because this will be easier to stitch with the pocket open. And I am going to add some glue, if I can find my glue. I'm going to pop my signature back in just to make sure that it does get covered. And I'm probably going to stitch not on the edge. I'm probably going to stitch, let's have a look. Well, I was thinking of stitching down there. I think it might be better if I cut this a little bit more. I was looking for this little glue pot and it was hiding. So let's just trim these off. What I want to do, what I'm thinking in my head, sorry, I know you can't hear my thoughts, is I want to glue it where I'm not going to stitch. So I've got to work out where I'm going to stitch. That's what I'm trying to work out in my little brain. I'm sure it'd be okay if I left it dry really well. That would be the sensible thing. Pop it like that. And I will stitch the edge, I think. So I'm going to glue that bit there.
cooler on. There's a pause for relief. Free pass, you don't even have to ask to be the cat in the sun. Someday I will see the whole deal through. Today I've got better things to do.
There we go. So that then will make the journal signature cover fit. So I would like to stitch along there if I can. We'll see how the sewing machine behaves. And then on the other side, got that there. And if I stitch, what I will do is I will fold that out and go around like that. But I'm going to let that glue dry really well before I even attempt anything like that. And if I wasn't doing any embellishing whatsoever, which is what I've been doing recently, is really not putting anything in the journals, just literally having them plain, which I'm a bit bored with, I would then stitch this in. But I want to play a little bit with this signature, so I don't really want to stitch it in yet. And that's what I want to do on camera with everybody here. Now this one, I need to glue into place, so I might as well do that while I'm here. And might as well do it the right way up, which is a bonus for cutting it. So I'm going to fold that in the crease. Let's do this one, I think. No, I tell you what, let's do the one that I need to stick the other side on. So with this one, I'm just going to measure the height because it's just about okay actually. I seem to have measured it quite well. I was expecting it to be shorter. So with this one, I'm not going to go portrait, I'm going to go landscape. And this is the one that needs two sides because it's quite flimsy. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm not going to glue it all the way. You could glue it so that it's solid and then you've got a really nice thick piece. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to create pockets at the top so that I can slip things inside. So the first thing we need to do is I'm going to make this big enough to actually fit the journal signature, which is a bonus when you want to add or when you want to use landscape. And I'm going to wrap it around. And then I'm going to trim. So I've given myself a little bit of leeway so that if I need to, I can trim it a bit more again. So let's make sure this is straight. Line it up on my board. So I need to go a little bit over. That in my pile, so I've got a nice little bit of a, I've got plenty of room there. And what you'll notice is it's quite rounded there. So I'm just going to fold it now with my bone folder, like that. And then I am going to glue on 3 sides. But before I do that, what I want to do is I want to stitch around the top, and I'm going to measure the halfway point here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, let's use a ruler, be easier. So I got 11 centimeters. So it's 5.5. So I'm going to put a thumb notch there. You could make this hidden if you wanted to. But there's no need to hide it from anyone. For me, everybody knows what I'm doing in my journaling. Okay, and I'm going to ink around. So I'm not going to put anything on the sides for now because I just don't need it. I may add something a bit later on, but I'm quite happy with the way this will be. And it gives me options for embellishing the front, because the front is quite plain on this one. And I like doing different things on each signature. They don't have to match. Okay, that's that like that. So what I want to do is I want to be really fussy with my sewing machine, and I want to stitch across this piece and then across this piece so it looks like they are sewn, and then I want to stitch all across. So I'm going to do the top piece first. So you can see there the stitching, very messy, but I don't even need to glue. What I'm going to do now is I am just going to go along the edges now and stitch all the way around so that it will be joined together. I'd like to say my messy stitching is intentional, but it's really not. I also can't blame my sewing machine. It desperately needs a clean, and I've been neglecting it. So you can see I've got some white bits there. So to cover those white bits, I'm just going to go in and do a little bit of distressing, just to take the edge off. I'm using Antique Linen Distress Oxide. You could of course trim it if you wanted to, but then you lose the height. So I'd rather do the stitching. And as you can see, my stitching is coming apart there, which is quite annoying. But anyway, that's going to have to do. And then I can glue this back up. So I'll keep that like that. And so that's another signature cover done. And while she's in a foul mood, I shall go and do this stitching as well. It's lucky I like scrappy journals, because this one is definitely scrappy. Mainly to do with the stitching. As you can see there, it's not happy. So I just need to glue these bits down here. I'm going to use my Bailey Arc glue. And I'll pin those pieces together. Well, actually, they're sticking all right. And that's this signature cover. Apart from snipping the edges off, it's pretty much done in structure. So I'll just trim off these edges. There. And there. And we will call that one done. And this one, where you've got pockets inside, probably need to do a little bit more inking, but I'm happy with that. You won't see it by the time it's stuffed full of goodies anyway. So there's 2 done. Here are the 2 signatures completed in their basic sense, and I made 3 more off camera, exactly the same technique, but I didn't add pockets to the inside like this one. I have just used a single sheet of paper for the cover of the signature, and this one I did portrait mode, so it was A4 portrait, which meant I could fold up the pocket, and I needed a little bit of trim then on the side just to make up, and you can see I've got some very messy stitching going on with my sewing machine. This one I did landscape mode, so the bit of paper I cut off at the end of that, I then made a pocket, 2 different size pockets to go on the back, and you can see here it was just one sheet of scrap, and I just put a diagonal in the middle there, not quite in the middle, sort of 3/4 way, and then I could do the pockets sort of different shapes. So those are the 3 that I finished, and the only thing that's left to do now is bind them. And depending on what your preference is, I'm obviously going to use these signatures to write in before I bind them into the main journal cover. I could leave them loose, but I do actually prefer to bind them. Sometimes I will just zip them through the sewing machine in the middle if I'm being really lazy. It's not the ideal solution because it can weaken the spine there in the middle, so if you're going to do that, then you do really need to put like a strip of fabric or something to protect the middle of the spine, and you're probably better off actually putting some fabric on the edge as well. The most appropriate method, I think, is to bind them by hand using a 3-hole or 5-hole pamphlet stitch. I prefer the 3-hole pamphlet stitch because it's easy to take the binding loose when I finally put them in the journal cover. So that's what I tend to do. And then you can always make it into a 5-hole pamphlet stitch when you do the final binding process. So I always use a template for my binding. I find it much easier to put the holes in, and then I know when I come to put them in the journal cover, the holes will match up with everything. So I'll just go and grab my template. So this is what a simple template looks like. And you can make these out of any type of heavy paper or cardstock, and you can use any dimensions that you prefer. You can see here that I've got 7 centimeters going from the center point to the next point. So I always go from the center rather than go down. Then I mark the top and bottom. So let's make one together. Let's just fold this in half-ish. This is quite a heavy piece of cardstock. But, should work okay. And you need to fold it again in half so you get your half point. And I forgot to mention that this is about the height of the signature cover, give or take a few millimeters. Right, so let's just draw in now that middle line. Could measure it, of course, instead of folding it if you prefer. Okay, so you definitely need that fold because that's what's going to go in the middle of your signature. And let's have a look at the different sizes. So if I went 8 centimeters, then it would be closer to the top. I do prefer 7. It does help as well for you to stick to the same measurements because then you're less likely to have signatures that misalign. You can use whatever whatever distance between the 2 points. So here's your middle and here's your first hole and your third hole. And then what you can do is you can, like I've done here, you can measure across. So if you know that you're going to be using this for your journal cover, you can then decide how many centimeters you go across, and then you can line them up, and then you've got a template for multiple signatures. But I'm just going to stick to the one. And then what you can do is with your awl or with a crocodile, you can just make your holes. So you've then got your guide on where to put the holes. And then just in case this piece of paper is not exactly equal distance, top and bottom, add in where your top and your bottom is. There you go. So we'll use this one. And I'm going to pop it in the middle, and I need some paper clips, I think. I'll just use this bulldog clip. So this is the point where you want to check that everything's about right in terms of orientation. You've got nothing upside down. And you need to check one side because the other side is generally matching okay then. There we go. You might want to reposition some of the smaller pages in your signature. That's looking okay. Yeah, I'm happy with that. And I'm going to pop that on there. Make sure top and bottom, that's looking all right. So if this piece of paper does end up being slightly longer than the height of your signature, then just position it so that it's sort of equal distance between the two ends there. Pop your holes in. And just make sure that's like that. Yep, that's okay. And what I tend to do is I just leave the bottom one in. And that's got black stitching, so let's go with black wax thread. I'm going to do 3 times so that I've got some tails. So if I decide that I want to add a bit of bling, I'll have plenty to play with. And just get a needle. So I need a fairly biggish needle. And so depending on where you want your tails to land, you start either from the outside or the inside. Now, I know these are going to go into journal covers, so I'm going to want these to be on the inside. I'm going to take them apart when I'm ready to bind them into a journal anyway, so it really doesn't matter too much. But remember to pull out your template and then pop it through the middle hole there. Pull it through, and then with this tail you can pop it in here, so that will keep it safe, and you can pull it nice and tight then. And then either go bottom or top, it doesn't really matter. I can hardly see it, so I'm just going to pop my awl through there so I can now see it. And I can easily get my needle through there, like that. It's always easier on the second hole. So you can pop that in there. And then all you need to do is go back in through the middle. And sometimes can be a bit tricky. So I'm going to put it in there. I'm going to pull out my needle. And then I am going to give myself a little bit more space there. Get these a bit equal. Then pop that to one side and then I can tie. And I'm just going to loosely tie a bow so that I can take this loose and I can reuse it if necessary. Now I can see that I've got a little bit of a overhang there. So it might be that I made the signature cover a little bit too small. I could cut that if I wanted to, but I'm not going to. I'm going to leave it. Because it doesn't matter to me. I think actually it's only 1 or 2 pages that are a bit too long anyway. That doesn't matter to me. And now I've got my journal signature basically ready to write in. And it's usually at this stage that I leave it and I start using it. But what I want to do is I want to create some embellishments and then write. But I've got to be careful not to do too much to these, because once I start working in them and adding all pretty things and it all looks really nice, I then don't want to add my writing. So there's definitely a balancing act on how much I do and how much I don't. So during the series of these videos, I'm going to work out how to get that balance right, which will be quite, I don't know, a bit of a challenge for me, I think, because I've been doing this for several years now and I still haven't managed to get it right. But I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to bind these other 4 journals. And if you need a repeat of this, just go back and rewind and then just practice. And if you make a mistake, don't worry, you can always cover the holes up. You can always fix wherever you think is a mistake. And the more you do this, the better you'll definitely get at it. Here are the finished journal signatures. So very simple composition. I haven't used a lot of different papers in these. It's mainly digital kits and tea dyed or coffee dyed paper, but I've added some original papers there, ephemera paper and book pages, just to give it a little bit of interest, which I don't normally do. But as I'm trying to expand my creativity along with my writing journal, I think it's a good idea to do that. We'll see how it goes. I'm hoping that you will stay on this journey with me as I find new ways of keeping my journaling interesting, because sometimes it gets boring, and if it gets too boring, then you end up not wanting to do it and it becomes a little bit of a chore. So I find having signatures that have got pretty papers in and lots of different things to maybe look at or plan for, certainly it helps with keeping interest in the way you're journaling. And in the next video, I will be looking at what to add into the signatures before you use them and looking at ways to embellish them, and thinking about how you're going to accommodate that if you're not actually going to keep the embellishments in there while you write, which is what I'm planning on doing. I don't want lots of bulk in my journals when I write with them. They have to be flat and they have to be able to fit in this type of cover, because that's how I carry my signatures around. And as you can see here, these are very boring. I did actually do some stuff with this one because I did it on camera. But usually they're just pages and pages and pages of plain papers. So that's why I need to keep them flat and embellishment free. So that's what we're going to look at in the next video. And we'll also make some embellishments, and we'll have a look at the types of embellishments that I like to include in my journal signatures. So I hope you enjoyed this. It is a very basic tutorial on making signatures, but it is how I journal, and it is something that I do week in, week out. And I am hoping that I will inspire you to also create your own journal signatures, create your own journals, and then record what you do every day. It doesn't have to be exciting. It's just the daily, mundane parts of your life. But every now and again, something great will happen that you want to capture, or you'll have a thought, an idea. Put it in your journal. You will feel so much better for writing it down. Thanks ever so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye for now.